We're gonna start. Good morning. Always pleased to be here at EENA, and always a bit impressed to talk in front of you. So this morning I'm sharing a specific session because the session will be about a project I have been the opportunity to lead with my two colleagues. So first of all, Ophélie Morand, a researcher in ergonomics. She's working in my team at Telecom Paris. And Robert Laribaud. Robert is deputy head of the emergency call center in Geneva, and is also emergency physician. This morning we're going to talk about a specific project. So the project is about engaging citizens in the survival chain, and to do so to use mobile app, and also to use specific methodology. So maybe we can move to the introduction. I don't have the... Okay. Thank you. Okay. So this project was about two ideas, and it has been drafted or designed after the COVID crisis, with this idea that citizens can do a lot in the emergency response. So we wanted first to see if we could create a local community, so on a specific territory, and to be able to bridge with the emergency center, the call center, and the physicians. So the first idea is that we can build trust, and in order to support this community. And so we worked with the team of Robert. So the project starts in 2021, ended a few months ago. This methodology, the Living Lab, Ophélie will be talking about. It's a specificity because it includes all the stakeholders of the project, meaning the innovator, the emergency call center, dispatchers, paramedics, the first responders, and also the citizens. We also try to test a new idea, the one that you can also work with professionals in an artistic approach in order to go further in the building of this community. So Ophélie, that's your turn.
So, hello. So first I'm going to give you a little context. So since 2020, in France we have the law of creating the status of citizen rescuer. So it aims to fight against cardiac arrest and to raise awareness of life-saving gesture. So this law meets the focus of public health authorities to improve emergency care. Indeed, it showed worldwide only 10% of OHC, so out of hospital cardiac arrest victims, survive. Choking is the leading cause of infantile death, and stroke the second leading cause of death and the first of disability. So we focus first on the practitioner needs, and we saw that dispatcher needs a rapid recognition of the pathology and implementing first aid procedure as cardiac arrest, as a cardiac massage and defibrillation, and Moffenson maneuver. So we focus on developing a rescue community. For cardiac arrest is a chain of survival that is described by 4 critical steps. So it's early recognition, early CPR, early defibrillation, and post-care resuscitation. And the first 3 steps can be made by a bystander. The chain of survival involves the collaboration of multiple interveners, so dispatcher, bystander, first responder, and paramedics. And the first rescue team is dispatcher, bystander. We saw that bystander are not acting on their own. Only a third of bystanders start CPR before interacting with the dispatcher. because they lack of first aid knowledge. And there is a bystander effect, that is the fact that where there are multiple witnesses, nobody acts. And then there are challenges in bystander dispatcher interaction, as difficulties in obtaining complete and adequate information, and difficulties to start CPR and other first aid. The collaboration between other interveners, the literature indicates that citizens are often perceived as a nuisance by the professional. So we found 2 community development levers. So the first one is to developing trust and an habit of collaboration in the survival chain. And the second one is technological levers that provide support for richer interaction. So in terms of technological resource, since 2015, public health guidelines recommend the use of apps as first responder apps. So the dispatcher can alert trained citizens located near the emergency. It improves the survival rate of victims up to 35%. There is also video live apps. So the dispatcher can see through the bystander camera and helps the assessment of the situation and to guide the first aid to perform. And lastly, there are apps transmitting demonstration video of emergency procedures. So these two levers can be worked on a living lab. That is an approach that aims to be a gathering and testing place for all stakeholders around one technology in context as close as possible to reality. And the use of living labs have shown positive effects on the development of trust and of a common frame of reference for all stakeholders. We are also interested in improving knowledge retention because we saw that learning from first aid training is forgotten after 6 months. And high fidelity simulation training shows benefits in terms of knowledge acquisition and retention. Because it puts the learner in an experiential learning setting that is described by learning by being actively engaged in the process, playing a role and experiencing events both cognitively and emotionally. And we add a step that is the creation of a photographic trace of the activity, because it shows that it helps to reactivate the knowledge gained from the experiment. So next, Robert, gonna give context.
Okay, and firstly, I would like to tell you about the place where we carried out this experiment. You have a map of Switzerland. Switzerland is a small country of 9 million inhabitants in the center of Europe, which has a federation of 24 cantons. We are a small state, and has 4 national languages: French, German, Italian, and Romansh. The canton Geneva is part of the French-speaking part of Switzerland, and it's located at its western end. As I know that in the next presentation, my colleague Fabrice Damy will tell you about what is happening in the canton of Vaud, I have mentioned the city of Lausanne, capital of the state of Vaud, on this map. Geneva is surrounded by France, you can see, and there are 500,000 inhabitants in the canton and about 200,000 more people who cross the border every day to come and work there. Next. In Switzerland, the organization of emergency numbers is shown on this slide. There are specific emergency numbers for different emergency response organizations: police, 117, fire brigade, 118, health services, 144, the same number as in Austria. In addition, there is the number 112, which systematically arrives at the police headquarters, which also manages the number 117. In Geneva, we have a common technical platform between the police and health service. The people who pick up the call arriving on number 144 are mainly certified nurses. There are also some paramedics. Consequently, by calling the 144 emergency number, the caller, bystander, or patients has direct access to the registered nurses or paramedics, who assesses the situation on the patient and systematically provide remote assistance with first aid while waiting for the ambulance to arrive on site. Geneva's emergency medical services have a high level of qualification with paramedics in all ambulances, but also the possibility of sending an emergency physician in the field, for example, if the situation is of a life-threatening emergency. Next. Emergency medical communication centers, such as ours, have special features compared to other public safety answering points, so as those run by the police or fire brigade. There are 5 main differences. Firstly, the assessment is not only about the situation, the event, but also about the clinical condition of the patient victims. They therefore perform a remote medical triage for 1 or more patients. Secondly, for the life-threatening emergencies, about 25 per day in Geneva, emergency medical dispatchers, nurses, or paramedics systematically provide remote assistance to bystanders so that they can give first aid before the ambulance is arrived in the field. Third, EMDs also alert volunteers, non-professional first responder using a mass alarm application. And fourth, often only provide remote response such a telephone advice, no ambulance dispatch, and increasingly based on short-term patient follow-up. And fifth, they also carry out the follow-up of the intervention, especially the transport to the patient to the hospital. They help the paramedics to find the best place for the patient to be admitted to the hospital. Next. On this slide, you can see the organization of our medical emergency system and some statistics about our activity. We have about 300 emergency calls per day. I've mentioned in the previous slide, registered nurse or paramedics manage the emergency call from the moment the call is picked up until the ambulance arrives on site when an ambulance is sent. They carry out approximately 175 patient assessments per day. There are 120 ambulance dispatches each day in Geneva, and the EMDs provide about 50 medical advice calls each day. Among life-threatening emergencies, there is slightly more than 1 out-of-hospital cardiac arrest or more than 5 strokes every day. There is approximately 1 choking situation every 5 days. Okay, on this line, I would like to explain to you why your emergency medical communication center has set up this project. There are 2 separate initial events. Firstly, at the end of the year 2019, we inaugurated new premises for our center. At the same time, we start our first responder program. We organized an open day for the inauguration and took the opportunity to invite the citizens of Geneva to visit our emergency medical communication center and to participate in a scientific study. The objective of this study was to measure and compare the performance of chest compressions performed by bystanders not trained in CPR, depending on whether they were solely assisted by telephone by emergency medical dispatchers or whether they were assisted by sending a CPR demonstration video to the caller's smartphones. We recruited 96 participants for this study, and after participation, they were trained in first aid and met with the EMDs who had guided them. It was an opportunity for the participant to visit of the Emergency Medical Communication Center. The visitor and the EMD were enthusiastic. The visitor for the discovery of the MCC and the EMD for discovering the people behind the voices. The second event was the generalization of the use of live video during the pandemic at COVID-19. We had a huge increase in emergency calls. It was very difficult to remotely triage the many people, sometimes over 200 per day, who were having difficulty in breathing. It was in this context that we started to use live video. We recently published a scientific paper, which you can find here, showing that medical triage decisions for suspect COVID-19 patients are strongly influenced by the use of live video.
So we followed 2 research questions. The first one is, how does the use of one or more applications affect the treatment of victims? The second one is a community rescue developing through the simulation debriefing artistic approach. So our field of experiment was Central 144 in Geneva that works with a Save a Life first responder app since 4 years. And we tested 2 applications, Urgent Time, that is an application of live video with the bystander camera, and Sarah, that is an application transmitting demonstration video, and we use lateral position of safety, adult CPR, Moffenson maneuver, and infant CPR. So to explain to you how the dispatcher uses the application, so when a bystander witnesses an OHCA, he can call the dispatch center through the dedicated number or through Sarah. And then the dispatcher can make the assessment by audio or by urgent time, so live video. Then the dispatcher sends the paramedics, and he can notify the first responder through the Save a Life application and start CPR by audio with the bystander, by transmitting a video with Sarah, or by guidance visual with urgent time. Then the bystander performs the CPR until paramedics arrive or first responder. Our protocol consists on 1 living lab pretest and 2 living labs, including 1 to 4 bystander, 1 dispatcher, 1 or 2 first responder, and 2 paramedics by simulation. Out of the 25 simulations we made, 13 were on cardiac arrest adult, 8 on the choking of an infant degrading into cardiac arrest, and 4 on stroke. Then the participants shared the debriefing, and we made 12 artistic restaging on OHCA situation and stroke. 2 to 8 months after the living labs, we invited the participants to participate in an exhibition opening. And 1 week later, we made evaluation interviews. So the population, we had 52 citizens recruited via an ad on the hospital social network, with a mean age of 53, and 10 dispatchers, 20 first responders, and 8 paramedics participate. So in terms of data collection, we recorded and filmed the simulation, the debriefing, and the artistic restaging, and we analyze by categorization of observation and textual data into 3 categories: application, collaboration, and living lab potentialities. Then we evaluate the impact of the apps and of the method and identify the key elements. So the first result I will present is a comparison of the time course of cardiac arrest simulation. So in the literature, we saw that it takes up to 3 minutes to recognize the cardiac arrest for dispatcher. So in our simulation, it takes 30 seconds to locate the victims and 1 to 30 minutes to recognize the cardiac arrest without application. And with urgent time, so live video, we saw that it's more longer. We also saw that 6 simulations were recognized the cardiac arrest before the 130 limit set by the dispatch center. And to start CPR, we saw it's in the literature it takes 3 to 5 minutes. In simulation 9, where no application were used, we saw that the starting time is 4:30. When the dispatcher sends the Sarah video and then starts the CPR, we saw that it creates a delay, but it remains the same time as without application. And when the application doesn't work and the dispatcher is persistent in sending the link, it creates a more longer delay. However, when the dispatcher starts the CPR and then sent the video, we saw earlier starting point. We did not see a clear difference with urgent time being used or not. But when urgent time is used without SARA, we also see an earlier starting point. Then the participants were joined by first responder between 5 or 6 minutes. And for 3 simulations, the first responder took over the cardiac arrest and let the bystander place the electrode of the defibrillator. And in other simulation, they place themselves the electrode, and we saw that it's a great gain of time. Then they performed the CPR in relay until the arrival of the paramedics around 8 minutes in Geneva. And then they perform in relay CPR. So what we saw is that the use of application creates a certain delay of action when there are technical problems, because SARA is a prototype, status as prototype, and network problems. And when bystander or dispatcher are waiting for the app to open to perform the gesture. However, when they are used simultaneously, they provide valuable resources for the quality of the massage.
Et 2, et 3, et 4, et 1, et 2, et 3, et 4, très bien. Les secours sont en route, hein, on a déjà engagé les moyens. Voilà, bien entendu, c'est très bien ce que vous faites, madame. Allez un peu moins vite.
SARA is perceived as a visual aid and an emotional support, because for bystander, it's easier to adapt to images than to verbal information, as we can see in this simulation when the starting of CPR is made without application.
Mettez chaque genou de chaque côté du bras contre la poitrine du patient, vous tendez les bras, mettez une main sur l'autre, et au niveau entre les seins, vous allez appuyer, d'accord?
Entre les seins, ouais, ok.
Vous appuyez fortement le thorax, ça doit s'enfoncer de 5 à 6 cm, d'accord? Il faut que je vous entende compter. Et 1, et 2, et 3.
Ok.
Allez-y, je vous écoute.
1.
Je vous entends pas, madame. Vous avez mis l'eau-parleur?
Oui, oui, oui.
Il y a l'eau-parleur, d'accord. Alors, appuyez bien. Et 1, et 2, et 3. Allez-y.
Ok. Et 1, et 2, et 3.
Et 3, et 4. L'ambulance va arriver, d'accord?
Ouais.
On fait ça jusqu'à ce qu'il y ait quelqu'un qui vienne vous aider.
Ok.
D'accord?
Ok.
Allez-y. Et 1, et 2, et 3. Il faut que je vous entende compter.
Ok. 1, et 2, et 3, et 4.
Super, les bras bien tendus. Vous êtes bien genou bien droit. Allez-y, continuez. Et 1, et 2, et 3.
So SARA is a help for CPR adult and infant positioning, and for finding and keeping a good pace for the massage.
La vidéo, il l'a sur le téléphone, mais également en direct de l'autre côté.
The video was not used for Muffinson maneuver because of time constraint, and it's perceived as not useful for the PLS because citizens remember and do it on their own. It's also an emotional support. It helps to convince reluctant bystander to perform CPR, and it provides some comfort. Urgent time is seen as a beneficial addition of a visual channel for the dispatcher. He can work with directly the concrete. He has a better awareness of the situation. He sees the ambience. He sees in real time the arrival of other rescue. And for the assessment phase, it was especially useful for the situation of an infant choking. And for stroke, it allows for further evaluation.
Vous allez lever les bras devant vous pour que je vois si
Il a
vous
froid, il
bougez
n'y a pas
bien
de
les bras.
thermomètre, mais il a hyper froid, donc peut-être qu'il augmente la fièvre.
Très bien, vous pouvez les reposer. Gonflez les joues, faites-moi une grimace.
Le 15
C'est
08
parfait.
1978.
Très bien. Je vais demander au monsieur qui est en ligne avec moi si vous pouvez faire voir votre doigt d'un côté gauche et puis d'un côté droit pour le monsieur voir s'il voit bien des deux côtés de la même façon.
G-U-E-Y. Issa.
Voilà, très bien. Là, d'un côté. Ensuite de l'autre. Monsieur, qu'est-ce que...
Alors, c'est rue Ligné, numéro 4.
On ne voit pas, vous ne voyez pas de quel côté, monsieur?
Ligner.
Du côté droit, très bien. OK.
It is experienced as time-consuming for the stroke situation. It also helps to guide first aid to be performed, so for Mofenson maneuver.
Allez-y, bien la tête, mettez la tête plus bas. 1, 2, allez-y. Voilà. Allez, 5 fois. Est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose qui est sorti?
Non.
Regardez. Non, montrez-le-moi là, l'enfant. Montrez-le-moi. D'accord.
And for the starting of CPR.
Alors, vous tendez vos bras entre les deux mains blancs, d'accord? Entre les deux pectoraux. Vous tendez vos bras et vous mettez vos mains sur le thorax. Voilà. Allez-y, comme ça, c'est très bien. Et puis maintenant, vous allez appuyer fort jusqu'à ce que le thorax se soulève assez. Et puis moi, je vais compter en même temps pour vous donner le rythme, d'accord? Alors, on y va.
Appuyez fort.
2, 3, 4. Chaque fois que je compte, vous enfoncez vos mains. Voilà, allez-y, n'ayez pas peur. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus vite. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
So in terms of impact, we saw that the Living Lab helps to establish criteria of use of the application that Robert will talk about just after. SARA and Urgent Time have been integrated into the protocols and are used currently in real-life situation at the Central. And an improvement of the quality of the cardiac massage given by the bystander was also noted in the following care. So, Robert.
Okay, we have learned a number of lessons for this experience about the work done by emergency medical dispatchers. First, the communication process must be written down in detail. For example, the word used by the EMDs, the order in which the different instructions are given to the witnesses. Second, the communication itself must be extremely professional, open-close question, rephrasing, etc. Third, the scope of the task to be carried out by the EMD is very large, and we have seen that the collaboration between two EMDs is necessary, at least to separate the actions between the one who assists the bystander and the one who allocates and coordinates the intervention units. Fourth, the indication to use live video must be well defined. 5. When using live video to assist bystander in first aid, at least 2 bystanders are needed in the field, one holding the smartphone and the other to performing the actions. Of course, all this requires training and education. Next. Of course, for live video, you need a smartphone and data network. This can be a limitation. Today, live video is very useful for the evaluation of a situation, especially if it's complex. In mountainous areas, for example, it can be used to show the landing zones for a rescue helicopter, for example. Regarding remote assessment of patients, live video is used when there is time or when you can't get enough information to decide. There are no video tools for assessment that go much further. For example, the Good Sam system, which remotely measures heart rate and soon blood pressure. The system works by measuring change in pixel density, which each heartbeat at specific point on the face, and is trained on different populations via artificial intelligence. The live video and the sending of demonstration video is very useful for the remote assistance of witnesses to perform first aid in case of cardiac arrest, choking, childbirth, or if there are complex gestures to perform. This is still a complex task. Given the interest we have seen for health emergencies, the use of live video will become widespread very quickly.
So the second research question was to develop a community. So we asked if experience sharing was a facilitator for the construction of a common framework. So we set up 3 sequential methods: simulation, debriefing, and artistic restaging that allows an experiential learning setting. So we saw that the projection in the situation was stronger for stroke than for cardiac arrest because of the play of a comedian that plays the stroke victims. And the emotion was stronger for the cardiac arrest situation than for the stroke. And mainly we have reassurance and relief and stress for the negative ones. So potentially there is a greater retention of learnings in the cardiac arrest situation because it's emotion that impacts the memory. So we analyze the simulation as an individual practice-oriented learning through the experience. For bystander, simulation is a way to experience an emergency situation in real time without prior knowledge. So they have to collaborate with other bystanders. So sometimes it works fine, sometimes no. And for most of them, it was the first time they called 144. And also, it's an opportunity to collaborate with a first responder and paramedics. It's also a way to experiment first aid. So they were surprised by the depth of CPR and how tiring it is. And they also expressed they were impressed by the strength required for Moffenson maneuver. And for dispatcher, simulation is a space for testing application to get familiar with them and adjust their future practices without risking any undesirable effect with delay. The second method we analyzed was the debriefing. So it's a way to get theoretical contribution on the simulation pathology for the bystander, so on its etiology, symptomatology, but above all, on the stake of performing first aid. It's an opportunity for the professional to foster an awareness of the necessity of the gesture, while reassuring about the potential consequences of the bystander action. The debriefing was a way to become aware of their active position for the bystander as the first link in the chain, because they gain a better understanding of the needs of the other actors, as getting a location and to determine if it's a life-threatening emergency for the dispatcher, and to have a relay and a source of information for the first responder and paramedics. For the professional, it's also an opportunity to get feedbacks on their practice, and it's led to modification in the emergency management procedures. The last step was to create a photographic representation of a key moment as one entity through a dialogue with an artist. So we saw that the key moments represented were mainly the initial situation for stroke. We also have assessment phase, so breathing assessment for cardiac arrest and vision assessment for stroke. And first aid action, we have a huge representation of CPR and less of the PLS. And lastly, moments of relay with emergency teams, so first responder CPR and paramedic care for the stroke. We saw that the succession of these methods allows a sense of belonging to the community to emerge because they fully feel the bystander as a first link in the rescue chain. For the bystander, they understand they have the responsibility to act, and for the other actor. It's also an opportunity to reinforce the sense of belonging of the first responder to this chain and to re-emphasize that the presence of first responder and bystander is crucial for dispatcher and paramedics. It's also a way to work on a small core in an engaging context. So in terms of impacts, we saw that the bystander remember the most is their own responsibility to act as a bystander. They feel ready to act in the future 8 months after the training. And they feel ready to call for help and perform cardiac massage. We also saw that they remember how to collaborate thanks to a better understanding of the role of 144 and a persistent feeling of reassurance. They also remembered to remain a relay for the paramedic teams, and we saw a persistence of a sense of belonging.
Okay, high fidelity simulation of life-threatening emergency allows to set up realistic protocols to carry out the assessment and assistance in carrying out first aid procedures. Following each living lab, the triage and remote assistance protocol were immediately adapted. This adaptation was also immediately implemented in real life at the Geneva's Emergency Medical Communication Center. Involving real citizens in professional simulation allows the EMDs to get their real feelings on communication, support, and difficulties encountered during the simulation. The Living Lab allows to raise the awareness of the bystanders about their crucial role in life-threatening emergency situations and the importance of a good collaboration with the EMD. The joint debriefing with the EMDs allows for immediate feedback from the bystander, first responder, and professionals on their experience with the EMD via telephone, more or less live video. There is an awareness that reliable information and immediate care in the field can only be obtained as safe through a very good collaboration between the EMD and the bystander. The experience also showed us the interest of artistic photography with a co-construction process of key moments of the participants to the simulation. The meeting around the exhibition several months after the Living Lab allowed for a reminder of the experience and had a strong impact on enlarging and strengthening the community of bystander scholars. This community joins the other community, which is made up of volunteer first responders. Finally, the idea will be to build a large community of first aid citizens sharing the culture of how to make an emergency call with a frame of reference and common values such as mutual respect, mutual help, providing the gesture that saves. This experience shows that digital tools can also help us.
No, it's fine. Okay. Okay, so this is now the time of the conclusion. I will go quickly because I think you may have a lot of questions about this project and the results. But basically, we see that we got good results in the practical contribution of the use of video in a dispatch center. We also, I think, were able to create a shared sense of a community in Geneva, which is quite good. And in a methodological point of view, with the research, it was also the contribution of art, and in our case of photography in the methodological design of a research project. So what's next? About the technology, we really think that something can be done to really create community through the technology, or to improve this technology to make the community be real, happening with collaboration, with messages maybe, and also in the practical point of view. And you said that for you it will be very the kind of way to interact with the citizens, the one who maybe had acted as a bystanders at some point, or the one we were victims and recover and so on. So the presentation is finished now. If you have some questions, please, it's your time.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Very interesting. I am Jacqueline Flock. I'm working at SINTEF in Norway, and in the project Engage, you can visit us here. I have a question about engaging people. I see that in your research, the average age was 53, and it's quite high. So I don't know, is there a reason why it was so high because of the recruitment approach? But I would like to. Do you have some idea how we can also engage all parts of the population, young people, teenagers, and yeah. Is it something that is worth?
But for the age, it's because I think the time of our simulation was in week, in day week. So I think probably the younger were not available. I don't know. Maybe it's that. And we also saw that for choking infant, it was a majority of young women, and for cardiac arrest, it was a majority of older men. So I didn't.
About the recruitment, what I would like to say is that for us, it's the first time that we really worked with real citizens, meaning that there was a call, and then they applied. So we really have real citizens. You know, most of the time you have people engaged because they have people working in the center or this kind of things. This was really new. The really first experimentation, we had three times. The really first was with your kind of specific citizens, which Robert, if you want to explain, basically they were in contact for any reason as a victims, or they were in contact with the hospital, and they agreed to be part of experiment. So this was something. This is why they came back, and maybe this can explain also the first age of the people, because they were more old. Oh, they were older, sorry.
Thank you. Hello. So I found this fascinating, talking about the video uses that you have. And I'm just wondering how you would integrate the sign language into the process. I'd be interesting to see how this specific visual way of helping people could use sign language within the system, because globally we're quite slowly growing the sign language for availability for accessible emergency services, and you could have a sign language interpreter or sign language video for deaf people who can't speak, and it would really help people to see what's happening. The PSAPs, the call handlers would be able to see the situation. I'm just wondering if there's been any consideration about that and how you'd integrate sign language.
Le langage des signes, comment est-ce que vous prenez en considération le langage des signes dans l'école center? It's about the integration of the sign language in the call center. We did not work on this, so from the research point of view, I do not have any answer. But I think maybe Robert, as in Geneva, how do you work with this?
No, we have only a system with send message.
It's a text message.
No. But we had a video demonstration for the gesture for saving. It's okay, but to understand the situation is difficult without call or write paper.
Okay, thank you. I think there is a question over there.
I can talk loud enough. How are you sending the link to the citizen so that they can begin the view? Is that what you're doing? Is your call taker is in communication with the patient or the citizen on standby, and are you sending a link to them so that they can see the video? How are you communicating that?
Yes, the dispatcher have the number of the citizen calling, and he send the SMS link, and the citizen open it. And
which can explain sometimes the delay, when we were talking about the delay, because you are kind of real life, so sometimes it's not working, sometimes you cannot find the link, sometimes the video is not opening. And this was also, I think, very, very good for you, because they were able to evaluate, to assess when you can keep doing and when you just need to stop and start. Thank you. I think we are running out of time, so I need now to... So thank you very much. Thanks, Robert and Ophélie, for this presentation.